and start the recording. So don't say something you might regret.
Something I might regret?
Something you might regret. So we'll get started here. Oh man, Vex's food looks good. We'll get started with, I just want to start with this video. Let me know if the audio's okay on it, by the way. After a bit, I'll probably have to pump it so I can barely hear anything from you guys to make it good. But this video is extremely concise and good, and so my idea is we're going to start with some of the basic concepts that he introduces and pause and comment on those and have some time for questions about it before moving on, so that we can kind of get the most out of the study. So let us begin.
There's nothing that changes in this fucking encounter at all in any of these polls. Do the same fucking thing. Go to the same fucking place.
I think everyone's doing a great job.
Like, you should never fucking move from this location. You drop your fucking...
Drop your web. Drop your web.
No. God fucking damn it, man! Your brain is cooked!
All right. So that clip is so good, but it does illustrate a point that the fight is super scripted, and so there's almost no RNG in the fight in total. And if you haven't heard yet, it is a dance boss. So the reason that we're going over this and we're going to do it in such detail is because of the preciseness to which it needs to be executed, and basically all 20 players need to know why and exactly how we're going to accomplish each mechanic. So let us begin. How's the audio, by the way? You guys hear that those levels are okay?
Yeah, it's alright.
Audio is good.
Okay, good.
Hello. If you're watching this, you're either a guildmate of mine or a lost raid lead looking for some advice on a very complicated fight. My name is Fraudit, and this is my personalized guide for Mythic Silken Court
And
to
hear
help
audio
my
on
humble
video.
low-rank
Go
CE
back.
guild,
Sorry.
Dogwater. When researching this boss, I noticed a lot of video guides were very bloated and cumbersome, with hard-to-follow instructions or raid plans.
So there's the first script. Or actually, you just run. Sorry, this this one is different.
This is my attempt to create a concise guide that my raiders can more easily follow. Although this guide is tailored to my own guild's specific needs, you're free to use this information to benefit your own guild. First things first, let's go over the mythic changes. At the start of the encounter, half of the raid will run under Anubaresh or Takaj to get assigned to either a red or blue debuff. These debuffs are permanent for the entire encounter and will last even through death, forcing us to split our raid into 10 red and 10 blue players. During the fight, if any two people of the opposite color run into each other, they will both instantly die. Dead bodies do not count as hazardous areas,
Great.
but Holy Priest angel
Another
forms
sire,
are
not
considered
here's
living
mechanic.
bodies and thus can still kill people.
Yeah, and what's interesting about that too, if you'll notice, you know how there's this radius? It's sensitive enough to where if your radius touches their radius, you're dead. It's not like if you touch their radius, like it's your radius to their radius. So you have to stay
it's
apart.
combined Sire Denathrius's and
Yeah.
Anduin's mechanic.
Yep, basically.
Both
So
instantly
we're
die.
okay.
Dead
Like
bodies
us.
do not count as hazardous areas, but Holy Priest angel forms are considered living bodies and thus can still kill people. Additionally, many damage-causing events of the fight will cause all affected players to drop an orb of their color on the ground that must be soaked. These orbs can only be soaked by players of the opposite color. Players can soak multiple orbs at a time, but no more than 3. Soaking an orb will give each player a stacking dot of that color. At 4 stacks, the dot will instantly kill that player. All players have exactly 20 seconds to soak all orbs, or else they will erupt. An orb eruption doesn't necessarily cause a wipe, but will instead cause an extra stack to be applied to all players that were able to soak that orb. This means if one blue orb popped, for example, the only people that would die would be red players who had soaked exactly 3 orbs. The entire fight of Silken Court is a precise dance of carefully rotating players around the room to soak orbs, while also resolving the mechanics of web bombs, web vortex, and dispel debuffs.
Cool. So that's
Raid
why
compositions for the
it is a precise dance. You split the groups, right? And then you need to have these soaks happen after mechanics go off, and in which basically the teams swap positions with one another, but in a concise and agreed upon rotation sort of manner, so that so that they don't collide with one another. And so we'll go over some of those steps and also like what the fight looks like on pole.
This fight are relatively flexible, requiring 2 tanks,
Court,
4 healers, and
It's
4
actually quiet. I was lying before.
It's quiet for you?
DPS.
It
Yeah.
is ear bleeding for me. Okay, let's go even more ear
Yeah.
bleeding. There we go.
It's
The
no,
main
it's good for
requirement
me.
is that you ideally
He
have
says
at
that's
least
it.
9 ranged players.
Yeah, he just doesn't know how to use Discord.
Oh, okay.
Fucking boomers, dude.
Yeah, no man.
I just had to crank. Okay, hang on.
Let me just turn up my hearing aid.
It's the video
Oh,
volume.
I found it. Okay. Found
Okay.
it. Sorry.
Is it too loud now?
Including ranged healers.
It's fine,
Exactly
dude.
6
No, I
of
know how
these
to
ranged
adjust it.
players must
Alright, cool.
be assigned to red. No more, no fewer. And 3 of these players should be assigned blue. Additionally, it is highly recommended that you bring at least 2 Death Knights of any spec to easily handle adds during the fight with Death Grips. Before we get into the strategy, I want to emphasize 3 major tenets that should be adhered by
Oh, these
every
are
raider
huge.
to ensure a
These are
quick
huge.
progression. 1. There is no damage check. This fight is a strict dance, and the only barrier to victory is having every raider simply understanding the dance. Damage matters so little that you can easily kill the boss with several players dead for multiple minutes at a time. 2. Always loosely spread. Orbs can be hard to distinguish from one another, making it easy to mistake a stack of orbs as a single one, which can easily kill an unsuspecting raider. Raiders must make sure that they're loosely spread whenever possible, so as few orb stacks spawn as possible. Stacks of orbs can more easily be identified by looking at the floating sword above the spawn. Make sure that you concisely communicate to other players with pings and voice comms if you identify a stack of orbs.
Rotates.
There's a triple on red.
Yep, there's right in the front of red. There's 3.
3. Consistency is key. The entire fight is completely scripted, meaning that you will benefit the raid the most by finding movement and positioning that works and then never changing it again.
Yep, so that's huge. Let's leave that actually on the screen there. So yeah, number 1, no damage check, right? It's kind of similar to how we approach Kaiveza, but it'll be very important that we don't try and push damage really for a very long time until we fully understand the fight from start to finish, what we're doing and why. So all of our focus should be on positioning, especially at the beginning, like the first day or so of pulls when we get here. Number 2, this is really good in terms of visibility on the fight, so that when you drop orbs, yeah, you're not stacking them as you went over there. And then yeah, number 3 is huge as well. We do have some players that like to reinvent the wheel every single pull, but this fight is just, you've got to nail it into a groove and just keep grooving. And it's kind of an agreement with you and the rest of the players that are in the raid. So, you know, if you are going to change the agreement, you need to be communicative about that as far as the movement, but there shouldn't be too much of that. Cool. Unless there are any questions, we'll move on and we'll talk about some of the beginning stages of the fight.
Consistency is key. The entire fight is completely scripted, meaning that you will benefit the raid the most by finding movement and positioning that works and then never changing it again. Phase 1 is all about managing web bombs to stop Anubarash's charge. To start off the fight, all players must run into the respective boss immediately to become assigned a color. It's worth noting that the cast above each boss's health does not actually represent your deadline to get inside. It's actually much quicker. Make sure all raiders get inside as soon as possible or they'll instantly die.
Yeah, there's a lot that we can emphasize that point quite a bit. There, we could save ourselves a lot of early pulls if you understand that this cast bar, yeah, is not the deadline to get into your assigned color. It's much quicker than that. There are a lot of raids that go through, I was in there, I got in there, and I didn't get assigned and you just died instantly, right? You will, and then it's just a wipe. Basically, if you didn't get a color, you weren't fast enough. You didn't get in there. Now they are mind smoothable, and you can basically walk up almost on their nuts before the pull, so there's really no excuse for not getting in there and getting your color. But just know that the cast bar has nothing to do with your deadline to get it. You need to get there sooner than the cast bar finishes, for whatever reason. It should be the cast bar, but unfortunately it isn't. The end of the cast bar doesn't really signify anything, actually, with the way that it's designed. Cool.
Shortly after, Anubarash
random.
Yeah, I mean, it's supposed to, probably, but it just isn't synced up.
will cast a frontal on a random blue player.
So this is interesting in that, and he'll go over this here in a second, but the big guy frontals only on blue team, whereas the long skinny boy, he frontals only on red team throughout the fight. So there's a lot to do with baits throughout the fight, but it's important to understand just that basic mechanic. So the very first thing that happens is this frontal on blue, as you can also see on screen over here in the plan. I don't know if I can make this a little bit bigger, but anyway, this frontal ideally would be baited more towards the wall, I think, rather than completely under this guy, and then the blue team would swap from this side of the long skinny over to this side of the long skinny over here after the frontal. Very important that you make it out of that frontal, as basically if you get hit and spawn an orb, it easily could wipe us. So you can't get hit. You like it's very exact and precise. There's not much saving these things, so just be hyper aware of that.
All frontals by Nubarash are baited on blue players and are called blue frontals, while all frontals by Skynspinner are baited on red players and are called red frontals. All blue players should be towards the wall to bait the frontal, and then move towards the inside of the room afterwards. After the frontal, a Nubarash will be movable and can be brought onto Skynspinner, at which point the red player should follow their boss and line up against the wall, opposite of the blue side. By this
I'm gonna just move the slide here so that what we have on our plan here kind of matches up with where we are
all
in the
9
video.
ranged players must get into position for the upcoming set of mechanics. 3 red ranged players will remain in melee, lined up against the wall behind their 3 web partners, who are all melee.
So something that's interesting about this, and I don't know, maybe those of you that are big brain out there and have already studied this can tell me.
3 red ranged players will remain
but
in melee.
they are up against the wall, like 2 of them, and then one of them is on the side. In my plan, I have these on the side. So I'm not sure why they're so far rotated around already, and I don't know that it matters too much. Maybe it's to get the blue side like rotated over here a little bit faster, but I'm not sure why you would need to do that necessarily. Something to note here, what you're going to see on screen is going to be a little different than my plan, and I think I actually like what's on screen here better than what I planned, and so we may adapt here. But basically what happens is when the web bombs drop, you actually don't dodge out of the swirl. It's extremely counterintuitive, but you soak it instantly. And so your combo partners, which I have outlined here, everybody's assigned, will basically, like, the melee will be at the front. The web bomb will always be baited on the range, and then the melee like partner or web bomb pair person will be at the front part of it, and it will soak and it will pop instantly because you're just sitting there in the middle of the swirl. The damage isn't too heavy, so it's not a big deal. And then that will link you with these players, and these players will be the 3 players eventually that stop the charge later. So, but the thing that differs from the video to what I have here is I say to scooch so that it spreads out the orbs that you would drop. So 6 orbs gets dropped here in melee from the web bombs, and then 3 out here from the ranged. And then you scooch, and then you drop another set, and that way you've got these sort of delineated, separated ones. They don't separate out at all. They leave them as just stacks of 2, and I think that's fine. Since you die at 4, And typically all you're really responsible for is soaking 2. As long as you did 2, you've definitely done your job. Then I think leaving them as stacks is going to be a little bit more consistent in terms of movement for us. So I think I like what's going on the video better, so let's play that and see what happens.
Up against the wall behind their 3 web partners, who are all melee. Another 3 red ranged players go towards the middle of the room and stand spread out in a loose triad, with 3 blue ranged players somewhat close by. Shortly after this, all red ranged players will be selected with web bombs, and then immediately after, all raid members will be selected with toxic rain. Everyone in the raid must evenly spread out to not...
So see how they just did that? They did the web bombs, then toxic rain, and now these are just perfectly stacked. So these are like little clusters. Each one is 2, 2, 2, 2, 2, 2. So these 6, and then there should be 3 that are in the middle of the room that are also like little clusters like that. So you just have to be aware that you're soaking doubles as the blue team comes around, because the blue team has many more orbs to soak than the red team, or the red team will, because blue team doesn't drop that many orbs because they don't deal with the web bomb mechanic here at the beginning. So that's just something to be aware of.
Cleave each other with either web bombs or toxic rain, or else they will spawn double orbs.
So they rotated
Players
around the
selected by
boss. That was, what is that, counterclockwise? So around to the right there is what you saw. So they did this sort of movement. So that's pretty simple, right, that you do that. I have Cav and Vex assigned to soak the far ones. So as the blue team goes around, so Cav and Vex will dodge through these 8 and not soak them and leave those for everybody else, and go and make sure that they get these around here. This will be heads up and faster. I also have teams of 3 doing their own dance here. So these ranged will dance around each other after the poison bomb drops or the poison rain drops. Then we will rotate around one another like such.
And that's all assigned.
It is all assigned. It has to be. Yep. All of these players are taken care of. So that's there. They rotate around. Some tech that I've seen, the rescue is like really good here. So let's say this is the pair that we decide to go with. These assignments and the roster is not necessarily decided right now, but I just needed to go with something in terms of planning. So like Mal can actually, after the green drop and they need to rotate, can rescue War around to this side and just get started really quickly, because the blue team's coming in hot right around this side. So you need to get the heck out of here and start rotating around the other side. Cool.
Web bombs must stand still and allow their bombs to instantly pop. The 3 web bombs towards the center of the room will be popped with no one in them, while the 3 on the edge of the room will be popped while 3 red melee partners stand on the edge of the swirly, instantly tethering them together. The act of popping a web bomb will also spawn an orb for both the popper and the tethered player. This means that 6 double stacks of orbs will be near the wall. All blue players must be aware of this. After orb spawn, all players rotate counterclockwise around the boss. Movement should happen as soon as the toxic rain ends. Do not finish any long casts and always move as a group. Towards the...
Yep. Movement should happen right after the toxic rain ends. So that's really important to make note of. You just need to rotate as soon as it drops.
Orbs
that's the
will
signal.
Be near the wall.
For
all
this
blue
first
players
movement,
must
at
be
least.
aware of this. After orb spawn,
Toxic
all players
rain,
rotate
and then they
counterclockwise around the boss. Movement should happen as soon as the toxic rain ends. Do not finish any long casts and always move as a group. Towards the center of the room, red and blue players exchange positions by carefully rotating around each other clockwise and soak each other's orbs.
Yep, so that's this one. So over here, so this would be like Caligon Zidibana possibly taking the inside track, basically rotating with their team near the boss, and then going in and soaking these 6 that would be left. And then in this case, it would be me, Halt, and Muck would rotate around the outside here. So we're kind of doing our own dance while this team is doing its own dance for this rotation.
Great dancing fights, my favorite.
Additionally, while this is happening,
Say what?
The dot.
The dot's not that intense. The dot's not a problem. It's just kind of a way for it to keep track of your stacks, of like how many you've soaked before you can't soak anymore. 4 kills you, right? There's no counterplay to that. You cannot immunity. It kills you through immunity and everything. It doesn't matter. So there is one point in the fight where we will actually plan to sack me, so that I go angel form, and I'm the blue team will pixel stack behind the boss, like pixel, and put all 10 orbs in one spot, and I will go and soak all 10 at once at the very end. But that's much later. Otherwise, you shouldn't really ever have to soak more than 2. I don't know that I'm ever the hero, but maybe I will be in this case.
Beetle ads will spawn near 3 random players.
Okay, so let's see, how much time do we have? Maybe 10 minutes max. The beetles, I do have some assignments for this. Basically, it will begin with Slappy Hands, then Maz's Mass Grip, hopefully, and then we will hit it with a D&D slow, and then a Buckus Cap Totem on the middle, and that should keep them under the boss long enough at that point for them to die. So there are 2 points at which you would need to do that for that team, but I have to assign 2 separate teams because most of those are minute-long cooldowns, and the next beetles that come up is just under a minute in timing. So the next one would be, well, it's War's Slappy Hands into Maz's Grip. The second one is Maz's Slappy Hands into Banna's Ursul's Vortex into Vex's Cap Totem. And hopefully D&D slow will be up for that one as well.
And are these going to be like the spiders where we actually target them? Or
No, you should be able to cleave off boss for this. Although maybe for Prague, we might target them just for a little bit to get them done with. He'll talk about this here in a second.
And fixate on the closest person. While these ads are mostly ignored on Heroic, they are a legitimate point of progression in Mythic and can give guilds a very hard time. These ads are incredibly deadly due to a stacking damage taken increase they put on their target, and they can very easily kill players if they are not CC'd properly. Death Knights should spend their grips to get their ads towards the boss as soon as possible. The ads start with a very large damage reduction that lowers over time, meaning resources must be spent to keep them under the boss for an extended period of time. This is easily fixed by using tools such as Ursul's Vortex, Abomination Limb, and stunning CCs such as Cap Totem. If an ad spawns too far away from melee, range players must make sure to help push the ad within gripping range. While the raid nukes down the beetles, all 3 web pairs must be used to stop the charge.
Okay, so he's gonna work on the charge stop there, but yeah, with the beetles, I don't have that marked out, but yeah, I have a few things assigned, and hopefully that will be enough. We'll see. You'll notice that he says like Cap Totem, Ursul's Vortex, like that type of thing for the stuns, and I believe that is because you don't want like a melee to walk in there and let's say do like a leg sweep, because that would just be coming too close to the middle of the boss and in contact possibly with somebody of the opposite color, whereas like Cap Totem is something that can be projected forward onto the ground under the boss, as well as Ursul's Vortex, D&D, those things can be projected forward instead of having like the melee move in for that CC. So that's where that's at.
Range. While the raid nukes down the beetles, all 3 web pairs must be used to stop the charge. The 3 ranged web players move across the line while the melee stay put. This is a scary moment in the fight where 3 red players will come into close proximity to blue players. Blue players must back up and give the web pairs space to stop the charge.
Yeah, so on the plan, if you're looking at the top down here, basically it's just important as they come across here that the blue team basically tucks into the wall and to give these players space. But if you'll notice, these blue players just rotated around and are in the middle of the room at the time that this charge is going to happen, and so blue can kind of, if you'll see here, those blue players end up on this side, which is totally okay. They just need to be aware, right, that this charge is coming through and that these 3 red players need the space to spread that across. Cool.
Once a Nubarash is stopped, Takaj will teleport away to one of two locations. Players switch to Nubarash and blast, while ranged players switch back to their original sides. Most cooldowns longer than 45 seconds can be saved for this moment. When the damage
This is one of the only points of RNG, by the way, is that this long skinny boy can teleport either over to this side of the boss or over to this side of the boss. That's like one of the only RNG pieces. It's either over here or if it's over here, but we handle it the same way either way. So we can talk about that for a second here.
damage amp ends, another toxic rain will go onto every player. This toxic rain happens.
This one is what we call the easy set, because there's no like web bombs or anything like that. So it's just like a pretty classic rotation, as you can just see here. They really should just rotate with one another. I honestly think that I don't like the range necessarily being out here still. I think you should just be with your raid group at this point and then just rotate out, but that may be something that we adapt and we like better with the range staying out. But I think everybody just rotating around in melee for this one is fine.
Without any other mechanic. Simply rotate as a raid like you did the first time. After a blue frontal, all players move to where Takaj teleported.
Yeah, so now we can move him.
While moving, red players move closer to the wall to the closer side of the boss, while blue players move along the center of the room to the farther side of the boss.
So that's a little convoluted, but basically you just want to maintain relative position, right? So as we're moving the fat boy across, you know, red team is on this side of the boss and blue team is on this side of the boss, so they're not crossing, right? We're just maintaining relative position. So like we're all moving together, right? And then we'll end up on the opposite side, right? It'll be more something like this, but you're just going to maintain that relative position. You're not going to rotate around each other as we're moving the boss, right? And this will basically, this is a reset, and it's basically rinse repeat from here with some minor differences with the setting up for other web bombs and rotations. So we do a drop, we do the web bombs, and then we rotate around the exact same way we did, just in a different position. A little bit different. And then we block the boss again for another damage amp, and then that starts into the intermission phase. So I think that's enough for us to chew on. Any comments or questions before we end the evening?
Bug die?
Bug die. This is a tough
Sorry,
boss. No, you're okay. This boss is probably going to be seeing some nerfs, but hopefully we'll see. I don't know if it's going to be in a way that is going to make us not need to prep. Sorry, what were you going to ask about the guide video, Blast?
Is this going to be the main video that you will be pulling your info from, or are there going to be other references we should also be looking at?
Yeah, so this is it's in our Discord,
right,
in the boss channel, and yeah, those two videos that I have up there are where I'm going to be pulling pretty much everything and basing my strat around. This one is pretty good, but I may adapt just a little bit to what it's doing. It's a really good introduction to the concepts, though, in a concise manner, whereas the other one is an hour and a half long, and it kind of rambles on and goes into much more detail, which I love, but I know many of us don't. So both of them are there, and this one won't necessarily lead you astray unless you just take some of the specifics with a grain of salt, right? And then follow the raid plan that I post a little bit more closely, except for like I said, I don't know that I like the scooch and spreading out these orbs here. I think we just stack those. I think that's going to be more consistent to execute, and I don't see any reason why not to do that. So I'm going to borrow that.
At that point, they're all double stacked orbs, even the ones, the three ranged that are in the middle.
So the way that it works, good question, is that only red group can get selected for web bombs, and 6 go out. So there's exactly 6 ranged in the red group. So it'll go on these 6 players
right, but
every time.
The 3 ranged guys are going to drop 2 orbs as well. Even though they're not getting wet, like they're just breaking those webs, but that and the acid
Yes.
So those are 3 double stacks in the middle.
Yes. Yep. These
So
these
the 3
are
people
6.
rotating through each get one because you can't. If you grab 2, you would die.
Yes, exactly. Because 2 would be 4 in this case, right? If they're a double stack, and yeah, so that's an instant death. So yeah, they'll rotate around and basically like, yeah. So let's say Ziddy gets here, he can soak this double stack. Yep, Caligon can soak this double stack, and Banna can soak this one or whatever, right? So it'd just be you just get 1 in that case, instead of like searching for and getting at least 2 or 3. It would just be 1 of the double stacks. Good question. Cool.
Am I ever paired with anybody in the red group? Do I ever go
No,
like as a partner with one of them?
you're just a blue guy doing blue stuff and controlling the ads, and moving the boss when necessary. What's interesting is that when this guy teleports, right, he can be here, the long skinny, or he can teleport here. And because of that, and the way that the group needs to maintain relative position, if he teleports over here, Mazza, you need to taunt and drag this boss over here, because Yerpal won't be able to from the red side, and vice versa. If he teleports over here, Yerpal needs to taunt and drag him over here. So there's a little bit of RNG for you guys there.
Is there a reason why you put me red? Why you put me blue and Yerpal red? Not the other way?
Yeah, I was just thinking about relative position to being able to grip onto, in general, the blue team is kind of the ook, zug, cleave, and kill stuff team. And so I wanted you there for the grips, to get that into that team and be more centralized on that location.
Generally speaking, Death Knight is better on the fat one, and Monk would be better on the skinny one because he could self-dispel him. I don't know if like do we? Well, I'll look into the tanking, but like, do we ever swap? Do we have to?
I don't know that you. I don't know. I've never heard anybody mention it. in all of my like 5 hours of study of the first phase, I've never heard anybody mention the tanks or the tank buster being a problem. That doesn't mean that you don't have to do anything, but I do know that they were talking about single tanking this for a while, and they've buffed and like tried to get it so that you actually have to 2-tank it. So I would imagine some swapping should happen, like where you need to actually be hitting some cooldowns for the major ability that happens here on. Basically, it's a 20-second timer, right? This first one at 15 seconds here, second one at 35. Yep.
That's the fat guy.
Piercing strike. Yep.
And the other one has a zone which is dispellable. That's why we usually had like them on the skinny guy to dispel himself.
Yes.
And I just all of the physicals. But okay, it doesn't matter.
I believe that morphs throughout the phase too, where this is a dispel at first, but then it turns into like a poison later. Maybe they took that out, but I need to look into that. That's a good question.
All the orb dropping, orb soaking, neither me or Yerpal will be doing any of that, right? Like we don't drop and we don't soak.
You can soak, and you do drop, because the toxic rain that comes out, the green thing, goes on all 20 players, which is on you. Okay. And then when you guys, when we do rotate around, you'll be rotating with your team, so you can pick up an orb or 2. Basically, I'm saying as a rule of thumb, you should look to pick up 2 orbs until they're all picked up. On the liquid weak aura pack, there's always this thing up. You see this with the 0/0. It keeps track of how many orbs are still left to soak, of each color that are up there, so you know to like keep looking. So you can help out that way.
Have to be soaked, right? Or no?
Yep.
Any of you left? All of them, right?
Well, like the video explained, I need to look into this and think about it from a more big brain perspective. But basically what happens is if one doesn't get soaked, it erupts and it applies a stack to the team of the opposite color. So all 10 players get to stack. So it will instantly kill a member of that other team if they've soaked 3. If one explodes. If more than one explodes, then definitely more players are going to die, just due to the stacking, and it's not like an instant raid wipe where like everybody takes big damage, but most likely people will die.
So it's like as if they all soaked an orb. Okay.
An extra one, yep. Yep, that's how it goes. Cool. Well, I hope this was valuable to you guys. I think for our own brains and digestion, that'll be enough from here. All of this is posted in our Discord and is available to review. We'll probably next week review a little bit of this, and then we'll go into intermission and talk about what intermission looks like next week.
Sweet.